In the early 1990s, Nintendo was untouchable. Mario had reigned supreme, the NES had defined an entire generation, and the Super Nintendo loomed on the horizon. For most, challenging that empire would have seemed impossible, but Sega wasn't most companies. From the arcades, they had forged a reputation for fast, flashy, and unforgettable games, and with the Sega Genesis, they were ready to bring that same energy into homes around the world. The question was, how could Sega take on a juggernaut like Nintendo? Well, the answer didn't come from one game alone. It came from a sequence, a story arc, 4 pivotal titles, each one adding a new piece to Sega's identity. Altered Beast roared first, carrying raw arcade power into the living room, and then Golden Axe built on that foundation, conjuring a world of swords, sorcery, and a cinematic scope. Then Streets of Rage brought grit, rebellion, and the pounding heartbeat of the 90s into players' hands. And finally, Sonic the Hedgehog tied it all together. Speed, style, and attitude wrapped into a single blue blur who would dare challenge Mario himself. This is the story of Sega's rise, told through 4 games that weren't just hits, they were stepping stones. This is the legacy of Sega's ascent: the Beast, the Axe, the Streets, and the Hedgehog. 4 games, 4 steps, but 1 rise to power. Together, they formed a legacy that answered the question, how do you topple a giant?
Welcome back to Root Tunes Arcade. I'm your host RT, and today we're going to be taking a look at the legendary classic Altered Beast for the Sega Genesis. Now, is this an ancient beat-em-up forgotten treasure, or does it belong in the depths of Hades? Well, let's take a look at it today and find out. First released in arcades in 1988 and brought to the Sega Genesis in 1989, Altered Beast was one of the first games many people experienced on the Sega Genesis. It was the OG original pack-in title before later on editions had Sonic the Hedgehog. And this game was developed by Sega's own Makoto Uchida, who also worked on Golden Axe. And they both had that same style of gameplay. At the time, this game promised to bring the arcade experience right into your own living room. But how does it hold up by today's standards? The story of Altered Beast is as ancient as it is simple. You're a resurrected centurion brought back to life by Zeus himself.
Rise from your grave.
And why, you might ask, he might pick you of all people? And what's your purpose? Basically, to do something that's beneath him and save his daughter Athena from the evil magician Neph. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, along the way, you'll battle hordes of the undead, demons, and other monstrosities in your path. At its core, Altered Beast is basically a side-scrolling beat-em-up game. You start as a weak human, but as you collect the spirit balls that the blue wolves drop every time you kick or punch one, they will drop power-up items. But the spirit balls kind of have a mind of their own. Once you kill the wolf, the spirit balls can elude you and get off the screen. Now, one thing to note, in order for the boss to show up at the end of the stage, you have to be in your beast transformation. So in the first phase, when you get the first power ball, your muscles grow and the infamous power up. Yeah, that's my bad impression of it. That's your notification.
Power up.
Now, I always thought this transformation looked weird because the legs on this dude, I mean, this guy, if he doesn't work the upper body, but definitely doesn't miss a day of legs. And then your second transformation, your upper body kind of matches your legs, but your head's extremely small. And then after you collect your third orb, you transform into one of 4 beasts. And each level requires a unique transformation. Stage 1, the werewolf. Stage 2, a dragon. Stage 3, a bear. Stage 4, the tiger. And then you go back to the werewolf. And each beast transformation comes with its own set of powers and properties. So obviously in this game, called Altered Beast, the transformations are definitely the highlight of this game. Each beast comes with special abilities, like the werewolf's fireballs or the dragon's lightning attacks. But the coolest part is how the gameplay changes depending on your form. Once you hit your Altered Beast form, you're pretty much OP for the rest of the level. To be honest, you'd have to actually try to get killed while you're in your beast form for the duration of the stage until you hit the boss. But it is possible. So if you do get killed by the minions in your beast form, Don't let nobody see you, or just don't tell nobody. Now the bosses are massive and can be intimidating, but let's be real. They're really not that challenging, they're not that hard once you figure out their patterns. Still though, in my opinion, the idea and some of the graphic design choices for the bosses, it makes the battles feel epic, especially back in the day in 1989. Now I'm just gonna point out this boss right here. This is just a personal thing of mine. Back in my early teenage years when this game came out, I always felt like, back in the day you go to the gas station and get some flaming hot Cheetos. My favorite being the Evans corn chips. That was a personal favorite of mine if you lived in the Chicagoland area. You really can't find them anymore. You can get them back in the day, 4 bags for $1. If you know, you know. But anyway, you can even do that now. You know how your fingers get real red and everything after you eat a bunch of flaming hot chips? I feel like this boss, when he was at his last phase right here, the red shot he did remind me of the cheese nibs and whatnot, and just how red he was reminded me of flaming hot Cheetos. Now, that's crazy, I know, but I had to say that. Now for an early Genesis game, Altered Beast, in my opinion, looks pretty good. The character sprites are large and detailed, and the monster designs are actually pretty cool. The backgrounds, they can be repetitive at times, but overall I feel like they do have that Greek mythology look, and it does set a somewhat eerie tone. And as far as the sound, the voice clips like Power Up, those are iconic, even when the computer says if it is a little scratchy.
Welcome to your doom.
Now the music in the game is pretty simple, and there's not a whole lot of tracks, but some of them are pretty nice. And here's a quick tidbit. The continue music when you die, I always felt like it was sampled by a certain artist. I'm gonna play the clip of the music, and you let me know who sampled this song in your opinion in the comments. As far as difficulty, you could beat this game in about 15 to 20 minutes. Now it can be pretty tough on the later levels, especially if you lose your power-ups or get overwhelmed by enemies. With the limited lives and continues, that means you kinda gotta stay on your toes. However, there are a few codes for this game, and one I recommend using because you're probably gonna die your first time through. Once you get to the continue screen, just hold down the A button and keep pushing start until you go back to the game. Once your game starts back up, you continue on the same stage that you died on, so you will eventually push through the game. And there's other codes like a stage select, sound select, etc, etc. With all that said, once you've beaten the game a couple of times, there's really not much left to do. Overall, Altered Beast is a game that cemented its place in retro gaming history. And while I feel like it's a little bit dated today, it's a blast still to pick up and play, especially if you're in a retro classic arcade style action. Now the controls are a little stiff and the game is super short, but in my opinion it's a perfect time capsule of the late 80s gaming. So is Altered Beast worth revisiting today? I'd say absolutely. If you're a fan of retro gaming or want to experience a piece of Sega history, you just can't miss this one. But I will say, don't expect it to be deep or lengthy adventure. The game is super short. In my mind, it's meant for a quick pick up and play session, a bite size of nostalgia, and then move on.
Now, Sega's first strike was Altered Beast. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. And with booming sound and the transformations and the unforgettable command, live from your grave, depending on what version you played, how good or bad it sounded. It was a bold showcase of arcade spectacle at home. It told players, basically in my opinion, Sega is here and they mean business. But let's be real, raw power only goes so far. And in my opinion, to truly win the hearts, Sega needed more than muscle. They needed myth. And so their next step was a world where warriors fought giants. Dragons roared across scorched skies and magic lit up the battlefield. Golden Axe was Sega's leap into a legend, a declaration that they weren't just bringing arcades home, they were building worlds.
Welcome to Rude Tunes Arcade, I'm your host RT, and today I'm going to talk about one of my all-time favorite Sega Genesis games. I'm talking about none other than Golden Axe. Now if you love fantasy settings, magic spells, and powerful warriors, then this just might be the game you're looking for. In this video we're going to look at everything about Golden Axe, including its story, characters, gameplay, the map, music, and dual mode that was a Sega Genesis exclusive. So what is Golden Axe? Well, Golden Axe is a side-scrolling beat-em-up game that was originally released in arcades back in 1989. And Sega didn't waste no time porting this thing over. Shortly after, it was brought to the Sega Genesis, where it became a mega hit on the system. The game is set in a medieval fantasy world called Uria, filled with swords and fearsome enemies. You can play as one of 3 heroes, each with their own special magic powers and fighting style. Now, the story of Golden Axe is pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot going on. An evil villain named Death Adder has kidnapped the royal family and stolen the sacred Golden Axe. So the kingdom is in danger, and it's up to you to stop him. So let's take a quick look at our characters. First up, we got the Axe Battler. Now, what I always found funny was he's called the Axe Battler, but he has a sword. But whatever, still an awesome character. He's a strong barbarian looking character, basically ripped from Conan. Despite his name, he fights with a sword and not an axe. And he's pretty much the well-rounder of the game. He has balanced stats, so he's pretty good at both attacking and using magic. He just doesn't specialize in either one. And next up, we have Tyrus Flare. Now, she's a brave, skilled Amazon warrior who uses a long sword. I like to think she was referenced and maybe some inspiration from Red Sonja, classic movie from the 80s.
Suppose I don't.
Now, she has the strongest magic attacks in the game. Her fire can one-shot a lot of enemies, and what's cool about the magic in this game, depending on where your level of magic is, depends on what type of spell will come out. So, she specializes in magic. Now, since we're on the subject of Tyrus Flare, I'm just gonna put this out there. Now, Sega Genesis back in the day, even back in that time, games could be highly edited and were kind of kid safe. But if we see Tyrus Flare right here, I'd have to say either Sega was pushing the envelope, or this one just slipped under the radar.
Who do we got?
That's all I'm gonna say about that. Moving on, we got Gilius Thunderhead. He's a tough dwarf who wields a massive axe. He might not have the strongest magic, but where he shines is in combat. And if you ask me, this is probably my favorite of the 3 due to the fact that he hits the hardest in my opinion, and his moveset is a little bit different as opposed to just spinning around hitting the opponent. He does a combat roll, a strike, and then comes back into his original position. So now that we got the characters, let's look at the map and level design. And another thing to note real quick is between each stage, the game shows a map of Uria, marking off your progress across the different areas. Now every time you beat a level, you'll see a brief scene that shows where you're headed next. And this part, even though it's small and subtle, I'm kind of mesmerized by this as a kid, because the music that plays is so enchanting and soothing in my opinion. And I think it's just cool how they draw on the map. It really puts you in the mindset where you're actually traveling with these guys. And another question I had, who the hell is the one drawn on this map? Is it Magic, or one of the 3 guys drawn on the map? That's a question I've had for years. But anyway, we have the Turtle Village, one of the most memorable stages that takes place on the back of a huge floating turtle in the sea. You can see the water in the background as you fight through the enemies. Then we got Eagle Island, which later you'll move onto the back of a giant eagle, and the scenery changes to cloudy skies. And lastly, once you're done, you'll end up at the ancient ruins and castles. You'll also pass through villages, haunted ruins, and eventually the final castle where Death Adder awaits. Now, as far as gameplay mechanics, I feel like they're pretty solid. So we know Golden Axe is a side-scrolling beat-em-up game, which means you walk from one side to the screen to the other. And the gist is you fight waves of enemies and progress your way through the map. Now you can attack, jump, and use special magic spells. Each character's magic is a bit different. Like we said earlier, Tyrus Flare, the strongest magic user, she can charge up and unleash giant fire dragons. Axe Battler, volcanic eruptions, and Gilius Thunderhead specializes in lightning. And while you can replenish your magic throughout the stages, more on that later, you still want to use them sparingly, especially if you want to get out of jam and do crowd control. Besides fighting on foot, you can also hop on the creatures and enemies and sometimes ride these beasts. Now these creatures can help you fight from a distance, breathing fire or swinging their tails at foes. If we look at the chicken leg, and that's this little round bird looking thing, if you ever played Alter Beast, a similar version of this creature is in the game and does the same attacks by swinging his tail. So I have to think that they brought him over in this universe as well as a creature that you ride on. with the same attacks. And once you get on one of these beast riders, you can actually clear out a whole map. I think they're OP, but they're also a lot of fun to use. And then let's talk about these little bastards here. Throughout the level, you'll see the little gnome-like thieves carrying sacks. If you manage to catch them and hit them, they drop magic potions or health items. Now this is how you go about refilling your magic meter and recovering your energy. And these guys, I just always thought they were creepy, because if you see right here, everybody's sleeping, just trying to, let off some steam, and these bastards just show up, start ransacking stuff and running around the map. Freaky deaky if you ask me. If you feel the way I feel about them though, there is a silver lining. You do get a rare chance to take these guys out. As seen in the example here, at this point in the level, you can actually knock this guy off the edge and send him to his bloody screaming death. Small victories, I'll take what I can get. And then one more thing, one special feature in the Sega Genesis version of Golden Axe is the duel mode. This gives you a different way to play the game outside of the main story. In duel mode, you can fight waves of enemies one after the other, and it's kind of a testament of how long you can survive. It's almost like, think of it like a survival challenge. Now duel mode might not be as big as the main game, but hey, think of it like Double Dragon for the NES. It's a cool extra feature that adds more replay value. As far as difficulty and strategy, Golden Axe isn't really the toughest game in my opinion on the Sega Genesis, but even with that said, it still requires some strategy. For example, enemies can corner you if you're not careful, and once they get you in the meat grinder, they're taking off hella damage. So learning how to time your attacks is very important. If you rush into a group of enemies, you might get knocked down repeatedly, because in this game, you can do meaties all day. And what I mean meaties is basically you're in your attack animation while the enemy's getting up and they're stuck right into and since there's no block in this game, you can hit them before they even get off the ground. And that's a very big advantage in this game once you master that. And the boss fights, they can be a little tricky at times, but nothing too crazy. Each boss sequence has a pattern. Some bosses charge you with their weapons, and sometimes it's not even a boss at all, it's just a group of soldiers. As far as graphics and sound, for a Sega Genesis game, Golden Axe looks pretty freaking amazing. I mean, the characters are big and detailed, and the backgrounds have a nice medieval fantasy style. You'll pass through various villages and ruins, magical forests, and even the giant turtle's back. And another cool part I thought was nice was when the kids would run through the village. That was from the arcade as well, but it was cool that they actually put that level of detail into the game. And the music in Golden Axe, that's probably my favorite part. It's very memorable. I mean, it has a heroic feel, a dark feel, with drums and horns that make you feel like you're marching in a battle at the beginning of each stage. And each stage has its own theme. And it's all captures, like I said, that medieval fantasy setting. And while the tracks do loop over, the tracks are actually pretty long, about 2 minutes each for the most part. So you might only hear it twice when you're playing through a level. One last thing to note about the Genesis version of Golden Axe is the fact that they added an extra level. So real quick, if you play the game on easy, you'll go through about half the campaign and fight Death Adder Jr. There is no ending for that mode, it just pretty much goes to a screen and tells you, okay, there's your practice level pretty much. When you play the regular game, you play through the regular campaign. However, when you get to the end, another part's unlocked where you fight Deathbringer, and he is a lot harder than Death Adder. So I feel like they even went that extra mile, because just being real, this is a pretty short game. So the Genesis version tries to expand it and does expand it in a good way, giving you another level to play through, another boss even though he's a palette swap, but he is a lot harder, I will say that, and has different magic attacks. And the fact that they include the duel mode. Now Golden Axe was so popular at the time that it led to several sequels and spin-offs. You have Golden Axe 2, Golden Axe 3, and they were both on the Sega Genesis, and excellent games. There was also a game called Golden Axe: The Revenge of Death Adder, which was an arcade-only release. I mean, this series helped define what a good fantasy beat-em-up could be. Many modern games, in my opinion, are still inspired by Golden Axe blends of fancy elements, side-scrolling, and cooperative play. And even after 30 years, Golden Axe is still remembered by fans who grew up playing the Sega Genesis version. It's also widely available in collections, re-releases, so new players can experience it on modern platforms. So what do I think about Golden Axe for the Sega Genesis? It's definitely a classic game that stands the test of time. I mean, the fantasy theme is cool, the characters are fun to play, and the magic system adds excitement to the battles. And like I said earlier, I love the music for this game. it fits it so well, and it's just some cool themes with percussion and everything. It just sounds amazing, especially since I just played this thing on my surround sound system. The music was epic. So this game's kind of pick up and play, so it's also great for a couch co-op session with a friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, kid. It's a easy pick up and play game. So I'd have to give Golden Axe probably an 8 out of 10. It's a great retro game with awesome co-op play, fun magic powers, and very memorable and nostalgic. If you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend give this one a shot and see why so many people still love this classic game. So that's gonna do it for this one, guys. But if you've played Golden Axe before, let me know in the comments about the memories that you have with this game.
Now, with Golden Axe, Sega had imagination, fantasy, and myth on their side. But fantasy, even as great as the fantasy was in Golden Axe, that still wasn't enough. I mean, the 90s were changing, they were evolving. And kids were just dreaming of, weren't just dreaming of dragons. They were living in cities, bursting with neon, urban. It depends on where you lived at the time. And, graffiti and that edge that Nintendo rarely touched. So Sega knew they had to capture that energy somehow. And so they came up with Streets of Rage. The music hit first. A pulsating beat, in my opinion, like pretty much anything unheard of at the time, and echoed off the sounds of, house music if you're from the Chicagoland area, definitely that house music vibe it has. And then came the fight. It was gritty, desperate, and stylish for the time. I mean, it was basically Sega putting the rebellion factor of the campaign they had in players' hands. I mean, if Golden Axe was a myth, Streets of Rage was pretty much reflecting the cool, dangerous vibe of the new decade. So,
in 1991, Sega didn't just release a game, they unleashed a revolution. Welcome back to the channel, guys, and today we're diving into one of the most iconic, hard-hitting, and downright electrifying beat-em-ups of all time. I'm talking about Streets of Rage for the Sega Genesis. Now, this just wasn't another side-scroller brawler. This was Sega's answer to Capcom's Final Fight, a game that didn't just challenge the competition, but it set a standard for home console beat-em-ups. With hard-hitting combat, one of the best soundtracks in gaming history, and an unforgettable co-op experience, Streets of Rage cemented its place as a cult classic. But we still have to ask, does it hold up today? Is it just a relic of the 90s, or is it still one of the greatest games in the genre? Well, grab a seat, cue up that bass-heavy soundtrack, and let's dive into the mean streets of this legendary game. Now, before we break down the gameplay, let's take a trip back in time. The year is 1991, and if you were around back in those days, you knew that there was a heavy, all-out console war between Sega and Nintendo. Now, the Super Nintendo had just launched, bringing arcade-quality visuals and Final Fight, one of the best beat-em-ups of all time. But in typical Nintendo fashion, there was a problem. The Super NES port of Final Fight was only single player and missing a key character. And Sega's bigger-than-life attitude at the time saw the opportunity and jumped on it. They desperately needed a killer beat-em-up, one that could rival Final Fight while offering the two-player co-op that the Super Nintendo was missing. It also needed a deep combat system and something that truly felt, well, like Sega. So the company's in-house team, led by Noritaka Furumisu and Yuzo Koshiro, got to work. Koshiro was a composer already making waves. He crafted an electric dance soundtrack so ahead of its time that even today people still call it a masterpiece. And the result of these two developers working together, Streets of Rage was born. A game that didn't just match Final Fight. In my honest opinion here, it redefined what a home console beat-em-up could be. So let's talk real quick about the story of Streets of Rage, because for a beat-em-up, Streets of Rage actually has a pretty solid setup. The city is in chaos, controlled by the mysterious criminal mastermind Mr. X and his ruthless syndicate. The police in this matter are powerless, corruption is everywhere, and crime runs rampant. But three former cops, Axel Stone, Blaze Fielding, and Adam Hunter, decide they've had enough of this shit. They quit the force and take to the streets themselves to clean up the mess the old-fashioned way, with their fists. Now, with all that said, let's be real, this isn't like Metal Gear Solid levels type of storytelling, but for 1991 beat 'em up, it's just enough to set the stage and get you hyped for the action. So let's talk gameplay mechanics. Now, at its core, Streets of Rage is a classic side-scrolling beat 'em up, but it does things better than most games of that current time. The combat to me felt weighty, fluid, and very satisfying. Each character had pretty much the same stuff: a basic combo punch that chains into a finishing blow, jump attacks that let you control space, throws and grabs allowing you to toss enemies or knee them repeatedly, the ability to attack behind, and that was a rare feature back in the day for beat 'em ups. And remember, they did all this with just 2 buttons, because the 3rd button, that's where we get into your special moves. The legendary police call-in. So instead of a typical special attack, Streets of Rage gave you police backup. And even though seen at the time as just being utterly ridiculous, because this police car, I mean, it had aim like no other. Not only could it fire its weapon all the way across the screen or all the way across the stage, but it even makes sure to hit everybody on screen except for you. Like I said, it was over the top, but it was genius in my opinion for 2 reasons. It made every use of it feel powerful when you needed it the most, and it gave the game a unique identity of beat 'em ups. I mean, every time you hear that noise, you know you're talking Streets of Rage. It's iconic for that. And you only get to use it once per life, so use it wisely. Especially in boss fights. I try to reserve it for that. Or if you feel like you're gonna die, just go ahead and use it before you die and you'll appear with a new one. Now some stages can't even use it, so on the last stage you don't have access to the police car. And also they had weapons throughout the game. You had knives, which were quick but short range. They had lead pipes and bats, and these weapons were great for crowd control. And then you had the bottles, and believe it or not, in my opinion, I was blown away by the fact that, you know, it actually made the break noise, like, you know, broken glass when you hit somebody in the head with the bottle. To me, I thought that was pretty epic. Plus, there's also health restoring items like apples and a whole roast chicken, because, you know, eating chicken off the street is totally fine in video games. And I always wonder, with these games, who cooks this chicken or whatever you find and puts it under a telephone booth or under a trash can? I mean, that was a classic thing back in beat 'em ups though, just punch something and chicken's under there, I don't know. But anyway, and also with that apple, I always felt like whenever you pick it up, it sounded just like the noise Pac-Man when you eat the fruit in the center of the stage. It kind of made that same sound. That's just me though, being weird. We'll go over our heroes real quick. You have 3 characters to pick from this game. You have Alex Stone, Blaze Fielding, and Adam Hunter. Now Axel Stone's kind of the poster boy for the game, and this is pretty much your standard balanced character, pretty strong in all aspects, doesn't specialize in any of those strong punches, and pretty much a solid all-around fighter. Next up we have Adam Hunter, and he's just like Alex Stone for the most part, but he hits a little harder and he is significantly slower than the other 2 characters, which in some ways that kind of sucks because lots of times when you knock down an enemy, it's hard to catch up with them. But you know, that comes with a cost for his strength. And lastly, we have Blaze Fielding, and she's the fastest character in the game, of course, with great throws and kicks, but slightly weaker attacks. But if you chain them together, I mean, it really doesn't make a difference. So in my opinion, I feel like Blaze is probably the best character, in my opinion, in this game. Now let's talk level design and enemy variety. The game takes you through 8 diverse stages, each with its own unique feel. So first up you have the city streets, which I thought they captured that essence well. Shout outs to the classic house music they play. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. If you're from the Chicagoland area, you probably know all about house music if you're from back in that era, and they captured this pretty good. And then you had the beachfront boardwalk, which I think they did a fantastic job in my opinion. I still remember being blown away by the effects of the water rushing up on the shore, and then the parts where it rains, the rain falls, the water splashes down from the ocean. I always thought those looked very good at the time, and I feel like even by the Genesis standards today, they still look pretty awesome. And then of course you have the industrial factories full of conveyor belts and hazards, and finally you have Mr. X Skyscraper, which I think this stage does really well. It's pretty much the whole stage just going up on an elevator, and that leads to the ultimate showdown. Now some of the enemies you have a pretty good variety, but they do get repetitive over time. You got the basic thugs. They're weak, but large in numbers. It can be very annoying if they gang up on you. You got these knife wielding punks, which can be super annoying. They just run across the screen. Some of them actually throw the knife, and a lot of them just hold the knife and charge across the screen. And then you have these whip wielding dominatrices. And Sega, you know, always pushing the envelope, but there they are. And then you have the bosses, of course, which included in my opinion, a nice variety of bosses. You had the tall guy with the boomerang, this bootleg Ultimate Warrior looking guy, and the infamous Ninja Twin Sisters, who, if you don't know what you're doing, can end your game and take all your continues in a heartbeat. But more on that later. As far as graphics and sound, I mean, this is where the game really pops off in my opinion. I mean, now Streets of Rage for early Genesis game still looks great, even to this day. The sprite work is very detailed. The backgrounds and the atmosphere, I mean, the color palette they use in this game really pops. And Sega was often known for, dingier colors and darker colors, but this game pops. Now, it's not quite as polished as Streets of Rage 2, but it does still capture that raw, gritty charm that perfectly fits with this game's tone. And then there's the music. Now guys, I can't stress this enough. Yuzo Koshiro's soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, every track, in my opinion, is a banger. I mean, each stage has some of the best music for the Genesis at the time. Now, from the tracks like Fighting in the Street, Moon Beach, I mean, if you've never played the game, I mean, just do yourself a favor. If you're not even interested in playing this game, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, just listen to the soundtrack. I mean, it's iconic. And I do have this one on vinyl as well. I mean, probably some of the best music for the Genesis in my opinion. I can't say enough about it. Let's talk about the difficulty and replayability in the game. Now, Streets of Rage, it's not the hardest beat 'em up out there, but it can be challenging, especially if you put it on hardest level. But what really gets tough is in the later levels where enemies attack in bigger numbers and bosses get more aggressive. Now, you do have 3 difficulty settings, and playing on the harder modes really tests your skill, because the stages can be long and drawn out. Now, as far as replay value, I mean, the stages are the same every time, but the co-op mode, that's where it's at. I mean, teaming up with a friend makes this game even more fun. And then, believe it or not, there's actually a secret bad ending. If one player betrays the other at the end, they actually have to fight each other, and the winner of that fight will become the new Mr. X, or Mrs. X if you got Blaze. So even though that's a subtle thing, I still think it was pretty cool that Sega thought that far ahead to put, a bad ending in the game. So by now on this channel, we're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to give you just a few tips that I think will bring your Streets of Rage game to the next level, and maybe be able to deal with some of those more challenging or even frustrating fights in this game. Alright, so one thing I do want to point out at the very beginning is, when you pick your character, I do appreciate the small detail that they put in right here. To give it more of that comic book fantasy feel, when the characters do their punching sequences inside the box, they do break the plane of the box, and I know that is so subtle, but I always was intrigued by that. So one of the things I can tell you about this game from my experience, and this is a personal thing with me, I don't try to mash the punch attack button as fast as I can. I try to do it in some type of rhythm. Because if you just smash, you're going to get uneven punches, and that sounds weird, but if you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. You should just mash the games in a rhythm. That way your punches will be clean and precise. Now, another strategy in this game, especially if you got Blaze, is to stun lock your character. So instead of completing your whole sequence of punches, you can just do 3 punches, wait for a second, and then do 3 more punches. And that way you can stun lock your opponent and keep them locked in infinite punches, as opposed to knocking them down, letting them get up and do more damage. So that's one strategy you can do. And then also another good strategy, and all 3 characters can do this. Once you have a boss character or a larger character, or any character in general, but just usually I think it works best for bosses, you can grab the character like I'm doing here, and then need the character twice, let go and grab them again. So what's good about this game is you don't have to you don't have to push the button. All you gotta do is just walk up to the person and be in their proximity, and you'll perform a grapple. Once you do the grapple, just do a couple of strikes, let go, grab them again, let go, grab them again, and you can make quick work of these bosses. And then with the police car, I'd say just use it every level. I try to save it for the boss at the end, or if you got, and one thing that's impressive with this game is the amount of characters that could be on screen at one time. Usually back in the day, typically if you got 3 enemies on screen, that was a big deal, but Streets of Rage, you can have up to 6, 7 characters on the screen at one time, and they can be pretty ridiculous when they get in big numbers like that. So I say big areas like this, just use your police car and clear them out, or if you feel like you're about to die, just use it, because there's no point in saving to the end of the stage. Just use it. And lastly, we'll go over one of the harder fights I think in the game is the Mona Lisa battle, which is the Blaze copies or twins or dragon twins or whatever you want to call them. They can be ridiculous at times, because what happens is they have a lot of invincibility frames and they tend to jump a lot, and once they grab you, they launch you and it takes a crap ton of damage. But what a lot of people don't know in this game is there's actually a counter to that. So what you can do is, the strategy to beat these people, or anybody in general, these guys that flip you a lot, the strategy here is once they throw you, push up in the C button. That's your jump button, and you'll land on your feet. And that's what you're definitely going to need that when fighting these twins, because they're going to throw you a lot, and if you're not countering the throws, you're going to die. Guaranteed. Now, if they come behind you and do a reverse suplex, you just got to eat that one. But usually they'll grab you in the front right here. And the strategy here is to walk around, go underneath them, and then try to catch one of them in the front. And if you win the grapple, you'll get some free strikes in a throw. Worst case, if they grab you and throw you, you can just land on your feet. So keep that strategy in mind. It'll save you quite a few continues. And they're probably still, even still knowing this, they're still going to kill you probably once. And another strategy you can use on them, which is not as effective and takes a long time, you can just keep dodging them and wait for one to walk behind you, and then just do your elbow move, like in Double Dragon, pushing both buttons at the same time, and you will do a backwards kick or punch or whatever your reverse attack is. So it's not used often, but when you do need it, definitely break it out. Other than that, guys, I mean, the game's pretty straightforward. You might not make it through the first time, but eventually you'll learn the patterns and learn where the characters are, and you'll be able to pace yourself through all the matches. So what did I think about Streets of Rage? I remember getting this game back in 1991, junior year of high school. I remember getting it at KB Toys, if you remember that back in the day. And for me, I remember I took it home and played it because I didn't really know what to expect. And I played it, and honestly, I was just blown away. Actually, literally blown away. That game gave me goosebumps when I played it, just for the music alone, and just I couldn't believe what I was playing on my screen at the time. This one definitely holds a special place in my heart as far as memories of the Sega Genesis. I mean, what I loved about it was the co-op feature. Me and my uncle played the crap out of this game, and the combat was simple. It's pick up and play, but it could get deep at times with just, you know, managing the enemies on the screen. But it was just all out fun. I mean, I love the variety of level design. I mean, each level had its own theme, and the music, I think that was the most iconic part. I remember getting to the first boss and hearing the music, and then it was just like you know, little voice dubs they had in there, and just the whole, you know, being from the Midwest, just the house music aspect of it. So that music was just like iconic. And you know, but Sega Genesis always had kick-ass music, kind of like Revenge Shinobi, but that's something else. But as far as Streets of Rage, just awesome. The only downside I can say with this game, some of the AI can be repetitive at times. They didn't have they had a lot of different characters, and each character specialized in whatever they did. Sometimes you did fight some of the same bosses at higher levels of the game, but I mean, that's a small, I mean, they were still cool. I mean, they were just cool designs of bosses they had. As far as maybe the gameplay, maybe you could move a little slow. I didn't like how sometimes the enemy could just dash in and out, and you really couldn't catch up with the enemy because obviously there was no run button back then. I mean, and that's fine. I'm nitpicking here. And if I had to say, maybe the move set is a little limited, but you know, compared to Streets of Rage 2. But Streets of Rage 2, I mean, that game's on a whole nother level than this game. I mean, Streets of Rage 2, in my opinion, is probably the best in the series. But other than that, guys, I really can't crap on this game. I mean, it's just, if you have never played Streets of Rage 1 before, I mean, definitely go back, give it a shot, give it a playthrough. And if you have played it, go play it again, because it's just, I mean, it's still fun and still holds up to this day. I mean, it's just a kick-ass game. So that's the best thing. I mean, like I said, it has a special place in my heart, and this game is probably one of the few times I'd say a 10 out of 10. I mean, Streets of Rage, just a homage to the old school beat 'em ups, and I felt like this game actually, for the first time, brought a true arcade experience into my living room. I mean, it was just an awesome time and an awesome game. So that's all I'm gonna say about Streets of Rage 1. But let me know in the comments, guys, what your experience with Streets of Rage 1 was. When was the first time you played it? What was your experience with it? How did it make you feel? Because I mean, for me, it just game changer. So
now, Streets of Rage for me was incredible. But even with the power from Alter Beast, the myth from Golden Axe, and the rebellion from Streets of Rage, Sega still, in my opinion, lacked one crucial weapon. You needed an identity. I mean, Nintendo had Mario, you know, the plumber and everything, recognized across the world. And Sega, at the time, they needed a face. A symbol bold enough to capture, you know, the imagination of millions. and fast enough to feel like the future and cool enough to define an entire brand. So in 1991, that symbol sprinted onto the scene. Sonic wasn't just a character, he was speed incarnate, along with the attitude and the bad cartoon he would have later on. I watched it, guilty as charged. I mean, the world he created was bright and kind of dangerous in some ways, and his sharp personality and attitude kind of helped carry it along. So Sonic wasn't designed to follow Mario's footsteps. Don't think of it like that. He was built to outrun him. And when I say that, I mean that in the sense of having more attitude and just being louder and, just more in your face. So Sonic completed that final piece of Sega's arc that they needed in their rise to power.
In the late 1980s, one name ruled the world of video games: Mario. He was the mustache plumber from Brooklyn who jumped on turtles, stomped Goombas, and saved Princess Peach over and over and over again. Kids everywhere were playing Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES for short. Nintendo wasn't just popular, it was a giant in the gaming world. And at the time, it felt like no one could ever even challenge them, let alone defeat them. But everything changed in 1991. That's when a brand new character sped into the spotlight. He wasn't a plumber, he definitely didn't ride dinosaurs or wear overalls. He was a blue hedgehog with red sneakers, wild spiky hair, and an attitude that just screamed cool. And the biggest difference was, he didn't walk, he blasted across the screen at lightning speed. And just like that, the video game world was shaken up. His name was Sonic the Hedgehog. Now Sonic was more than just a new video game character. He was a symbol of rebellion, a message from Sega, and probably the most powerful and important thing, a direct challenge to Mario. Sega was tired of being second place. They wanted to prove that they could make games that were just as fun and just maybe even better than Nintendo's. To do that, they needed a mascot who could keep up with Mario but also stand out on his own. And Sonic was definitely that hero. Fast, flashy, and full of attitude, he showed kids that video games didn't have to just be slow and careful like Mario's adventures. They could be fast, loud, colorful, and exciting. And the console he came on, the Sega Genesis. With Sonic leading the charge, Sega turned the underdog console into a major player in the console wars. Like I said, it wasn't just a new game, it was the start of a whole new battle in the video games industry. One that would change gaming forever. A character that helped Sega go from being the other company to a serious threat to Nintendo's throne. This is the story of Sonic the Hedgehog, a battle of speed versus strategy, cool versus classic, Sonic versus Mario. In the late 1980s, the video game world had one name on top: Mario. Nintendo's plucky plumber was everywhere. TV commercials, cereal boxes, toys, and even cartoons. Kids knew him well. Parents knew him well. And Sega at the time, well, they were just trying to keep up. At that time, Sega had their own console, the Sega Genesis. But it didn't have a game that could really compete with Mario at the time. I mean, sure, they had hits like Golden Axe and Altered Beast, but none of their characters were strong enough to become the face of the company. Sega desperately needed more than just a new game. They needed a new hero. So in 1990, Sega of Japan held an internal competition among its artists and programmers to create a brand new mascot. They asked, who's going to be the answer to Mario? And some of the ideas were just wild and over the top. They had a bulldog with a big attitude, a man with fangs and fur, even a rabbit who uses ears to grab stuff, and finally, even early versions of Dr. Robotnik as the hero. But one character stood out, a blue, spiky little creature with red sneakers, big eyes, and a confident smirk. That character was Sonic. Now, the character was created by artist Naoto Oshima. He imagined Sonic as fast and edgy, inspired by pop culture. His blue color matched the Sega logo. His shoes were actually based on Michael Jackson's boots from the Bad video. He definitely wanted to give him a 90s swag and the attitude that would appeal to an older audience. Once the character was chosen, Sega's dream team came together. You had Yuji Naka, a genius programmer who loved pushing hardware to its limits. He wanted to make the fastest platformer ever created. Then we had Hirokazu Yasuhara, a smart level designer who could craft worlds that worked perfectly with Sonic's speed. And of course, Masato Nakamura, a pop musician from the band's Dreams Come True. Now, a side note here, if you don't know who Dreams Come True are, they're basically a J-pop band, and some of their best work can be found on the PlayStation 1. It's called Dancing Stages featuring Dreams Come True.
If you like DDR or DDR type games, or if you just like listening to music, definitely check that one out. Dreams Come True rocks. Anyway, back to Mr. Nakamura. He was hired to write the game's music, even while working on a real album at the time. But it has to be said, Sonic didn't start off perfect. In the early stages of development, Sonic was actually a rabbit who could pick up objects with his ears. But this was too complicated, and the team wanted simplicity and speed. That's when they realized, what if instead of picking up things, the character could just roll around on a ball and smash through enemies? That single idea alone changed everything. They looked at animals that could roll, and the hedgehog won. Why? Because its spikes could be used as a weapon, and it was unique and gave them that over-the-top edge. And let's be real, you just didn't see hedgehogs in video games. And just like that, Sonic the Hedgehog was born. A genuine, bona fide mascot with a mission. But he couldn't just be a game character, he had to be Sega's answer to Nintendo. Now Sega knew they couldn't just be like Nintendo, they had to be cooler, more extreme, more for teens than little kids. And that's why Sonic was built with attitude. And if you left him standing too long, which would later be incorporated in many other games, he would tap his foot and just give you that glare like, come on man, we gonna move or what? He came off as impatient, edgy, and always in a hurry. Yuji Naka created a special programming trick called the rotation engine, and this allowed Sonic to zoom around loops and slopes without the screen breaking or the game slowing down. And that, my friends, was a huge deal in 1991. Absolutely no other platform looked or felt this fast. Even the levels were designed around this. That's how to make sure that there were multiple paths through each stage. That meant speedrunners could blaze through levels while explorers could actually stop and find hidden areas. Sega also focused hard on making Sonic look different from any other platform game at the time as well. The art style kind of gave off more of a rock and roll vibe than Saturday morning cartoons. The colors were loud and popped, and the backgrounds moved fluently. Sonic's backgrounds were definitely alive. By 1991, Sega had a star on their hands, and over time they bundled Sonic the Hedgehog with the Sega Genesis console in North America, replacing the Ultra Beast pack-in. And guess what? Sales absolutely exploded. Sonic helped Sega go from a distant second to #1 in America. Even though it was for a while, still, to pass Nintendo in the American market, that was freaking huge and pretty much unthought of at the time. What Sonic represented was a symbol of change, a mascot that actually told Nintendo in so many words, you're not the only game in town anymore. And the Genesis already had a great library, but with the help of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega officially arrived. So not only was Sonic a great mascot, that's one thing, but you also gotta have great gameplay, and Sonic delivered in spades. When Sonic the Hedgehog first hit the Sega Genesis in 1991, it just didn't show up, it blasted onto the scene. At a time where most platformers ask players to kinda, slow it down, take their time, move carefully, Sonic was like a lightning bolt, racing through levels with style, speed, and still retaining that attitude. Sega had one goal, to do what Nintendo didn't. Or Nintendo don't, you know that slogan, you know that commercial. And with Sonic, they delivered something brand new. The whole idea of speed meets skill. Sonic the Hedgehog is a 2D scrolling platformer just like Super Mario Bros. On the surface. But the moment you press right on the D-pad, you realize this isn't your average platform game. Sonic is built around speed. The faster you move, the more exciting the games become. But that speed comes with a challenge. You gotta think fast, jump quicker, and react to everything the level throws at you. That means memorizing paths, dodging enemies, and sometimes having to perfectly time your jumps. Going too fast without paying attention, you might hit spikes, lose your rings, or fall into a pit. Now Sonic's controls are pretty simple. They're easy to learn, but can be hard to master. You move left, right, and you got a jump button. His main attack is also what makes him unique. He curls into a ball and rolls. The rolling move lets Sonic smash into enemies, break walls, zoom through loops, all while keeping that momentum Sega advertised so heavily. But here's where the game really gets smart. Sonic isn't just about holding right or going fast. Every level is filled with choices. You have upper routes, lower routes, hidden paths, and actually bonus secrets throughout the levels. Skilled players learn which paths give them the most rings or avoid tricky traps. So it's just not a test of speed, it's a test of memory, reflexes, and even offers you that exploration if you want to take the game down and play it a little slower. Now let's talk about the life system in Sonic. Instead of help points like RPGs or power-ups like Mario, Sonic's survival depends on rings, golden collectibles that are scattered everywhere throughout the levels. The good thing is, if Sonic has at least one ring, he can take a hit and survive. He'll drop all his rings, but won't lose a life. If he has no rings or gets hit, that's it, you lose a life. Now if you collect 100 of these rings, Sonic earns an extra man. And this made the game intense and exciting. Rings became a safety net and a goal.
players would frantically try to collect dropped rings after getting hit. Now, if you got 99 rings, Sonic unfortunately doesn't drop 99. He'll drop a whole bunch of them, so you're gonna lose some. But for the most part, if you got 2 or 3, you can actually see where they put the detail in where they drop 2 or 3 rings. You can actually get them back. And it gives you an option. So sometimes if you're diving into deep danger, all you gotta do is grab just 1 to stay alive. And then there's more to it than that with 100 rings. If you finish a level called the zone with 50 or more rings, a giant ring appears at the end. If you jump into it, you'll be transported to a special bonus stage. Now, the bonus stages in Sonic the Hedgehog are some of the most memorable parts of the game. Inside these colorful spinning worlds, Sonic bounces around like a pinball, and there are rotating walls, flashing lights, hidden bumpers, and twisting paths all throughout the stage. Your goal? To reach the center of the stage and collect the Chaos Emerald. Now, there's 6 Chaos Emeralds to collect in total. These magical gems are hidden inside the bonus stages and are required for you getting the true good ending of the game. Without them, players see a more neutral ending, but if you collect all 6, you get a special final scene that proves you mastered the game. Now, for me personally, I love those extra bonus stages. It was something innovative, and it kind of showed what the Sega Genesis could do and what it was capable of. Now, I'll admit, I did feel like sometimes those stages were a little wonky. Because the control kind of weird. The more you played it, the better you got at them, but for the most part, they could be a little awkward. But it was just cool trying to rub Sonic up against the breakable walls until you got to that Chaos Emerald. So yeah, definitely a nice touch. And all you got to do is finish the level with 50 rings. You could enter that bonus stage. So you had plenty of chances to get the Chaos Emeralds. You had to get 6 before the game ended. So with the gameplay mechanics in place, let's talk about the zones. When a player first hits start button on Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis, they're just not jumping into a simple side-scrolling game, they're entering a whole new world, a series of imaginative lands called zones, each filled with unique designs, incredible music, challenges, and a ton of surprises. These 6 main zones, followed by the final showdown, aren't just levels, they're a journey through a living, breathing world where speed and strategy go hand in hand. So I'm going to take you through each one, and we're going to look at what made each one so special and unforgettable. First up, we got the Green Hill Zone, and this is where the legend begins. This is the level that made Sonic a bona fide household name. With its bright blue skies, waving palm trees, checkered background patterns, and the giant loop-de-loops all throughout the level, the Green Hill Zone is the perfect introduction to Sonic's fast-paced style. It teaches the players how to run, jump, roll, and collect rings, all while enjoying a catchy tune that still gets stuck in fans' head to this day. And this, like Sonic, is not just the first level. Again, it's a statement and a challenge to Nintendo. Green Hill Zone shows off the Genesis color palette, with every background detail adding to its tropical charm. The first time you dash through this loop and smash through the wall, you definitely know you're not playing Mario anymore. Now, I remember the first time I played Sonic the Hedgehog, and just watching on the CRT back in the day with the smooth frame rate CRT offers, just to see him go through the loop-de-loop and, get those coins and just bounce in the air, like high up in the air, and just the fast movement of the Genesis. I didn't think the Genesis was even capable of doing that. I ain't gonna lie. I didn't know it could even do that. And it was just such a sight to behold. And just as fast as it moved, smooth as it moved, breaking the screen or, slow down. It was just an amazing thing, especially in 1991. That was huge. Next up, we have the Marble Zone, and that was pretty much danger beneath the surface. Now, after speeding through the Green Hill Zone, players get a big surprise. Marble Zone is actually slower, heavier, and all about the timing. So instead of just speeding through the level, you actually gotta take your time and see what you're doing. And the setting is more like what looks like ancient ruins or a fiery underground temple. The zone is packed with lava pits, sliding stone blocks, and crumbling platforms. So you just can't rush here. One wrong move and Sonic falls into the fire. And the music is like stellar. Again, the music is perfect for each zone. With the mysterious melody that matches the spooky setting, Marble Zone teaches patience and timing as opposed to Green Hill Zone going buck wild in speed. And this proved to me that Sonic wasn't just about the speed, it was about the control and then implement some forms of strategy. Next up, we got Spring Yard Zone, the urban playground. And this is where things get nuts. Now, the Spring Yard Zone throws players into a cityscape that feels like a giant pinball machine. It's full of bumpers, trampolines, and springboards that bounce Sonic high into the air. And the background looks like a city at night with sparkling lights and another banger of a funky jazz style soundtrack. It was only 6 zones, but each zone had like just banger after banger. Yes, I am glazing the Sonic OST hard. They nailed it with this soundtrack. And with the springs and the pinball mechanics, players are constantly being launched in different directions, making it one of the most unpredictable zones in the game. And again, in my opinion, hats off to Sega for making everything keep that fast, fluid motion. With so much vertical movement, it rewards exploration and quick reflexes. This stage is all about fast, fun, and totally unique experiences. Next up, we got the Labyrinth Zone. A little bit of strategy with Marble Zone, and random wildness with Spring Yard, we got the Labyrinth Zone. And this flips the rules on its head again. This time Sonic is underwater. Now every platformer game does have an underwater stage. And to couple that off, for some reason, Sonic just can't swim. Instead, he sinks like a rock, forcing players to slowly navigate the water currents. Now, one of the most genuine, unique features that really, made you feel like you were underwater was the pressure that built up every time Sonic runs out of oxygen. And then you have a warning jingle that plays to remind you you're almost out of time. The water makes everything feel heavy and slow, which is the opposite of what Sonic usually is. And I love how once you get the bubble, it cuts back to the track. I mean, that's just really cool. It makes you feel like, oh, I just got some oxygen. It was subtle, but it was real clever how Sega did that. So this stage is tense, it can be frustrating at times, and unforgivable if you run out of oxygen. Now, some players love it, others dread it. Either way, it stands out as one of the most iconic underwater levels in gaming. And again, I'm blazing the music. This is probably one of my favorite tunes in the whole game. Next up, we got Starlight Zone. And after the stress of the Labyrinth Zone, Starlight feels like a breath of fresh air. Set high above the clouds, this level is peaceful and wide open, and has a very chill track. You'll see fans blowing Sonic across gaps, seesaws launching him into the air, and smooth ramps that let him build up speed again. The background sparkles with stars, and the calming music helps players relax and kind of wind down, kind of like the calm before the storm. It's one of the prettiest zones in the game in my opinion, and offers a perfect mix of platforming and momentum. It's like a reward for making it this far, kind of tying everything you've learned throughout the previous zones together to try to navigate this one. And lastly, we got the Scrap Brain Zone. And now it's time to enter enemy territory. Scrap Brain Zone is Dr. Robotnik's personal fortress, and it can be brutal at times. The level is full of traps, spinning saw blades, conveyor belts, disappearing platforms, electric fields, and instant death fire pits. So you gotta be really careful on this stage, because at this point, the Scrap Brain Zone implements everything you've learned, all the strategy you've learned from all the zones, and puts it to a true test to try to navigate this one. Every step feels dangerous, and the music is fast and intense. It's a true test of everything you've learned so far. And finally, we're at the final zone, the grand finale. The final zone doesn't have platforms or even enemies. It's just Sonic and Dr. Robotnik in a one-on-one battle. But here's the twist, there's no rings this time. That means one mistake and it's game over. The boss fight is pretty intense and all about dodging crushing pistons and predicting where Dr. Robotnik will appear. And the tension can be real in this game. I mean, the boss isn't impossible, but he can be challenging. So overall, each zone in Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't just a level, it was a part of Sonic's world. From the grassy hills and burning ruins to the underground caves and robot factories, every zone had a story to tell, and it did it well. They all look different, sound different, and actually play different when you think about it, keeping the experience fresh from start to finish. It's the variety of the levels that help make Sonic the Hedgehog a classic. And what was Sonic's mission throughout the game? Well, it was simple, but heroic. Save his animal friends from being turned into robots. As he speeds through the levels, he breaks open machines and frees little birds, bunnies, and squirrels trapped inside. So while we're talking about Sonic, let's take a quick minute to talk about Dr. Robotnik. As we all know, every hero needs a villain, and Sonic has one of the most creative and iconic bad guys in gaming, Dr. Ivo Robotnik, also known as Eggman. With his round body, wild red mustache, and crazy laugh, Robotnik went down in history as both funny and fearsome at times. Now, Robotnik isn't just trying to take over the world, he's turning innocent animals into robot slaves called badniks. I guess a play off the word beatniks, I don't know. And these machines are found all over the game. Each one has a tiny animal trapped inside. And when Sonic destroys a badnik, the animal inside is set free. And I thought this was a cool thing, how the animal jumps off the screen. I thought it was pretty cool at the time. So at the end of almost every zone, Robotnik shows up in his flying machine, called the Egg Mobile, or Egg Mobile, depending on how you want to say it. Now what makes the Egg Mobile special is that it changes each boss fight. One time it might swing like a giant wrecking ball, the next time it might shoot fire or try to crush Sonic with spikes. Each fight is different, and they get a little more challenging as you go. So a little bit about Robotnik's personality, he isn't just smart, he's evil in a more cartoonish way, over the top. He laughs when Sonic gets hit, escapes when he's defeated, and always has a backup plan. So now we have a better understanding of Sonic the Hedgehog, and we know about the game, the levels, the great music, the great villains, Robotnik. Let's take a small glimpse into the console wars and the effect that Sonic had catapulting Genesis potentially in the lead in 1992. Now, before Sonic came along, Sega was trailing behind in the console race. Nintendo's NES had dominated the late 80s, and its new console, the Super Nintendo, or SNES as it's known, was expected to continue to trounce all over Sega and continue that trend. But Sonic changed everything. With his speed, style, and attitude, gave the Genesis a new identity, something edgier and cooler than what Nintendo was offering at the time. And by 1992, the unthinkable happened. The Sega Genesis actually started outselling the Super Nintendo in North America. For the first time, Sega wasn't just playing catch-up, they were actually leading the way. And the console war, a term used to describe the fierce battle between Sega and Nintendo at the time, was now in full swing. And Sonic was Sega's secret weapon. Sonic became more than just a video game character, he became a pop culture icon. His bright blue color, confident smile, red sneakers stood out everywhere, and kids loved it. He was fast, fun, and full of attitude, which made him the perfect hero for the early 90s. He starred in multiple animated TV shows like The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which aired on different networks and introduced even more kids to the character. He also had a long-running comic book series published by Archie Comics, which lasted over 20 years and became one of the longest-running video game comics in history. Also, to couple that, he had tons of merchandise, including toys, t-shirts, lunchboxes, backpacks, and even had a breakfast cereal. If you were a kid back in the 90s, there was a good chance you owned something with Sonic's face on it. And as technology evolved, so did Sonic. He leapt into the 3D world of gaming in the late 90s with titles like Sonic Adventure on the Sega Dreamcast. He also appeared in spin-off games such as Sonic Spinball, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and Sonic Riders. And over 25 years later, Sonic would even jump to the big screen, starring in Hollywood movies that introduced him to a whole brand new generation of gamers. So Sonic didn't just help win a battle in the console wars, he helped reshape the gaming industry. He proved that the right character could carry a company, define a generation, and create a lasting legacy. I want to talk real quick about what Sonic offered to gamers at the time and what Mario offered at the time, and why there was a big contrast difference. In the early 1990s, the video game world was rocked by a rivalry that would change everything. This wasn't just about two characters or even two companies. It was about two ways of thinking, playing, and having fun. On one side stood Mario, the cheerful mustache plumber who helped make video games cool in the 1980s. And on the other side stood a brave new challenger, Sonic the Hedgehog, a blue blur with red sneakers, spiky hair, and an attitude to match. When Sonic the Hedgehog launched on the Sega Genesis in 1991, it wasn't just another platformer, it was a challenge, a bold shot fired directly at Nintendo, the king of video games at the time. Sega didn't want to copy Mario, they wanted to destroy him. So this is a quick rundown of the greatest video game rivalry on the 16-bit era. Speed versus strategy, and how the games felt. Well, the most obvious difference between Sonic and Mario was speed. In Super Mario Bros., the action was careful and thoughtful. You had to jump from block to block, avoid tricky enemies, and explore hidden areas. But it gave you time to think. Mario is about control, timing, and discovery. Now Sonic, on the other hand, flipped that idea upside down on its head. Sonic was all about momentum. When you pressed forward, he took off running. Loops, springs, ramps, it felt like a roller coaster. You weren't meant to stop and look around. You were meant to move and have fun. In Sonic's world, keeping your speed was the reward. Mess up and you slow down. But if you're good, you can fly through the level almost like an airplane. So gameplay, Mario wants you to explore and take your time. Sonic wants you to go fast and have fun. Next, let's take a look at the worlds. Super Mario Bros. Had bright, cartoony worlds. You'd see grassy fields, spooky castles, sandy deserts, and cloudy skies. Everything looked simple, but it all worked together perfectly. Mario kicked butt in that department. And Sonic, on the other hand, went wild with his art style. The famous Green Hill Zone had bright green checkered hills. Later levels showed off glowing cities, ancient ruins, mysterious underwater places. So Sonic's world looked cool too, almost like a comic book or a music video from the 90s. And while Mario's levels mostly went in one direction, Sonic's levels had multiple paths. You could take the high road for speed, or the low road for safety, or blast through the middle if you were fast and skilled. This meant every time you played a certain level, it could feel different. And I feel like both games in their own right specialized and maximized what they did well. So this isn't to say one was better than the other. I mean, I'm a huge Mario fan, and I'm a huge Sonic fan. But they do contrast differently when looked at side by side. Next up, we got character personality, who they were. Mario was like a friendly next door neighbor. You know, he didn't say too much, but everyone liked him. He was goofy at times, fun, easy to relate to. He was the kind of guy that your parents didn't mind you playing the game. He was safe, Nintendo was a very safe bet for kids. Sonic was the opposite. He had attitude. Sonic was a little more edgy, a little more reckless, and a little more hip at the time than Mario was. And what made him cool for me? Sonic loved chili dogs. Enough said. The character posed a statement. Sonic was designed and made to feel like the cool kid who skateboarded, listened to rock music, and never played by the rules. And honestly, a lot of kids to the 90s, not the crap on Mario, but I'm just saying, we had seen Mario evolve through the years, and in some circles, Mario kind of felt like yesterday's news. And Sonic kind of felt like what was going on right now in gaming. And Sega leveraged that to their advantage. And they did it with total, unfiltered disses on Nintendo. You didn't have to be politically correct back then. Sega kind of felt like they were going to say what was on their mind, and they said it. Let's talk about the music and sound. Now, Mario's music is epic. It was created by the legendary Koji Kondo and is some of the most famous video game music ever. The original overworld theme is upbeat and catchy, something you could just hum to forever. Sonic's soundtrack was totally different. Masato Nakamura from the J-pop band Dreams Come True, one of my favorite, made Sonic's music sound more like a pop or rock album. The beats were funky, the bass lines grooved, and it felt like modern and just like Sonic himself. You hear that music, you automatically associate that with Sonic. And the same thing can be said about Super Mario. You hear his music, you know it's Mario. So they both had that same kind of thing going for them. Lastly, I think one of the most important parts at the time was the marketing mayhem, the console war. Sega just didn't make Sonic cool in the game, they made him cool everywhere. The company launched one of the boldest ad campaigns in gaming history. The slogan, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. These ads weren't shy. They mocked Nintendo, saying Mario was slow and old school while Sonic was fast, flashy, and full of energy. Sega aimed straight at the kids who thought Mario was for little kids and wanted something more edgy and exciting. And they kind of did the same thing. Sonic and Mario both had cartoons, comic books, action figures, and were larger than life at the time. And lastly, like we said, Mario games taught you how to slow down, look around, and think before you jump. And you had to learn the rules of the world, where to find hidden blocks or how to defeat tricky enemies. And Sonic was about the flow. You needed to feel the rhythm of the level. If you kept moving and reacted quickly, you'd zoom to the finish line. If you slowed down or got hit, you'd lose your rhythm and have to fight to get it back. So overall, I feel like both Sonic and Mario definitely have a huge impact in today's gaming culture. And eventually over time, they would cross over, and I would see something with Sega, with Sonic actually being on a Nintendo system. Back in the day in the 90s, when me and my buddies argued and fought about the console wars and who's gonna be better, who's better, Sega and Super Nintendo, never in my wildest dreams would I think that I would live to see Sonic on an actual Nintendo machine and actually Sonic and Mario crossover. Because back in the day, in the 90s with video games, crossover wasn't a thing. Okay, crossover was from your own IPs. You know, maybe first crossover might be like Mario Kart or something like that, where they actually Mario characters or Nintendo characters crossover. Same thing with Sega. But Sega and Mario on the same game was unheard of. Okay, but you know, over time it happened. So eventually they did evolve into something that Sonic and Mario we know today, and you know, that kind of relationship. But back in the day, Sega was kind of ruthless with marketing with Nintendo. It wasn't like today. It was kind of edgy. It was kind of rough back in the day. So yeah, that's just a quick little look at the history of Sonic and Mario. If you lived it back then, you know all about it, and if not, I'm sure you've seen other videos that cover that. So I just wanted to talk about that because I feel like the culture in the 90s of gaming was very different than what it is today. So I just want to take you back on that journey. So why does Sonic still matter? Sonic the Hedgehog was more than just pixels and platforming. He was a movement and a revolutionary in Sega's uprise in the 90s. He made speed exciting, attitude cool, and showed the world that Sega could compete with the biggest names in gaming. And here's the cool part. Sonic's original game is still just as fun to play as it was back in 1901. Sonic games are still being made, movies are being made, and you can still play the old school original Sonic 1 to this very day, with its catchy music, bright graphics, and thrilling level design, and they have definitely aged well and stood the test of time. So whether you played Sonic back in the day as a kid, a teenager, or a grown-up, or just now discovering him for the first time, there's no better time to jump into a Sonic game. And Sonic's legacy is still strong. And I have to think sometimes, without Mario, there may never have been a Sonic. And without Sonic, Nintendo might have never been challenged. I think both Mario and Sonic pushed each other to become better. It was basically the tale of two icons. Sonic and Mario represent two different kinds of fun, and for kids growing up in the 90s, choosing between them wasn't just a choice, it was a part of your identity. Were you Team Sonic or Team Mario? Schoolyards and living rooms and playgrounds, that was a question that started 100 debates, and even today, the rivalry still lives on in the hearts of gamers everywhere. So that's gonna do it for Sonic the Hedgehog, guys. I mean, for me, this game, it was a phenomenon at the time. It was something brand new that the industry hadn't seen, and it definitely made Sega. I always loved the Sega Genesis. I thought it was a great system and great games, but that Sonic the Hedgehog took it to a whole nother level, and you know, put Sega on top. Even if it was only for a little bit, it still put Sega on top. And that, to beat Nintendo, especially in the 80s and 90s, I mean, that was not like today where, you know, you're kind of all over the place. Back then, Nintendo was king. And to be uprooted like that with the Sega Genesis, that was definitely a part of gaming history. So that's gonna do it for my take of Sonic the Hedgehog. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Sonic game is. There's so many to choose from. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 rates as one of the best Sonic games of all time, but definitely play the old school one and move on to 2 and 3. I think the Genesis had some great Sonic games. They would go on into the Dreamcast life cycle, and it was just a great franchise overall. And you can even play them together now with Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. So I mean, it's just tons of great Sonic games to play.
So looking back, Sega's rise wasn't one stroke of luck. It was a carefully built legacy, stitched together from one daring game at a time. You had Altered Beast, which declared Sega's arrival with arcade muscle, Golden Axe, that proved they could spin legends as epic as any film, Streets of Rage, that gave them style, rebellion, and the sound of a generation, and Sonic the Hedgehog took all of it, the power, the myth, the grit, and transformed it into a cultural icon who actually stood toe-to-toe with Mario himself. So we have to remember, these weren't just games, they were statements, each one in their own right. And together, they defined Sega's identity, fueled their momentum going into the 90s, and allowed them to rise as Nintendo's greatest rival in the console wars of the 1990s. This has been the legacy of Sega's ascent: the Beast, the Axe, the Streets, and the Hedgehog. 4 games, 4 steps, and 1 rise to power. So what I think about these games and Sega's rise at the time, it was a phenomenon. It was kind of unheard of because Nintendo was pretty much, everybody had a Nintendo, okay? Sega Genesis came out, and at the time, I felt like it was kind of the next thing, kind of like the next gen. It was next gen, and it was kind of like, you know, that's what the cool kids were getting. I mean, I had a Nintendo for a while, and I wouldn't get my Sega till later, and my uncle ended up getting one. And it was just like, it was one of the rare, like nowadays, I had to say nowadays, the Xbox One and the PlayStation, well, I'll say PlayStation, the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, while it is, you can kind of see the graphics sometimes. Some PlayStation 4 games look so good that, and some PlayStation 5 games look so bad. And the same thing can be said about the Xbox, where it kind of blurs that line from a console upgrade. Now, I will say the Xbox One and PS2 jump to the PS3, Xbox 360 era, you could definitely see the generation jump there. And that would be one of the last times, in my opinion, where you could actually see a straight up, I had an old gen system, I got new gen. Even with the Switch 2, I feel like you're still kind of blurring that line. But from the NES to the Genesis, that was definitely, no questions asked, you could definitely tell that was definitely a generational gap, a generational jump. And the games they started with, like I said, Altered Beast, it had, you know, it just had that arcade, because NES games, as fun as they were some great games on there. An arcade port was very rarely ported over well. Even their best ports were still kind of you know, graphically, you can definitely tell the difference. But now the arcade version of Alter Beast didn't look as great, or the Genesis version didn't look as good as the arcade. It was still so close and so on par, and it didn't lose anything in translation for the most part. A few glitches or a few graphics here and there, but for the most part, you would get the same experience. And then Streets of Rage was built from the ground up. That transition from Golden Axe arcade to Golden Axe on the console, and then even with the console version of Golden Axe, they added more stuff in there. It wasn't a lot. It was that one little stage where you fought like 2 or 3 more skeletons. You crossed that bridge and you fought Deathbringer. So yeah, it was kind of, you know, just more sprites and, you know, one more background, but still, it was something they gave you. Then they gave you the dual mode in Golden Axe, which was pretty cool. Streets of Rage, I mean, that was their answer to, you know, other fighters that they had at the time, Final Fight and stuff like that. And Streets of Rage was so cool because, like I say, it had the 2-player action, the soundtrack in that thing, just the house music feel, and then the classic Sega music that they had back in the day. It was just awesome at the time to have. And then lastly, you had Sonic the Hedgehog, and you really don't have to say anything about that. I mean, he's still probably one of the few games that's still around to this day from that generation. They kind of, you know, they kind of rebrought Golden Axe. You'll see it every now and then, and they had that one reboot for the PS2 with Alter Beast and a few spin-offs here and there, but Sonic still held the test of time. I mean, you still got Sonic games being made to this day. He's graced every Sega Genesis platform. He's been on the PlayStation platform, the Xbox platform, movies, successful movies. So yeah, Sonic's definitely was their golden goose right there. And it just, at the time, if you played Sonic the Hedgehog, it was so great because, I mean, it was nothing like it at the time. And I know that's a catchphrase a lot of people say, but it was nothing, a mascot to run that fast, and for it to be, you know, just that was this whole thing built on speed and attitude, and to have, you know, the adventures and just to have the different level designs, you know. Then, and I will say, maybe it might have took something from Mario jumping on the enemy and killing. Okay, you can say that, but for the most part, you play the 2 different games and they do totally different things, even though they're both platforming games. So I feel like they just did with that design and the iconic Sonic music that would go on, you know, kind of like Mario. When you hear Sonic's music, you know it's Sonic. So, and I think the key takeaway from it all for me at the time, Nintendo, to beat Nintendo back in the 90s. I mean, nowadays you can say Nintendo, I don't know what's going on with them. They're kind of like, I don't know, guys. I like my Switch, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a big fan of Nintendo's current practices as far as the pricing and you know, how they feel like they put that copyright on. You can't make a game. I can't go into the whole details. Basically, they're saying you can't make a game like Pokemon. You can't spawn something and let it fight with you. How do you patent that? But Nintendo is being Nintendo. I guess it's a Power World thing. But anyway, getting off that, it's not the same Nintendo of the 90s where they were a force to be reckoned with. They were like a wall, you know, they were powerful. And for Sega to come up and challenge them, and even for a small minute, if it was a day, 10 days, a year, whatever, a minute, to be ahead and actually be more popular than Nintendo, 90s old regime Nintendo, that spoke volumes. If you were around back then, you know how, you know, Nintendo was just how strong they were. And for Sega to actually surpass them for a moment in time, that was huge. So I mean, me and my buddy used to argue about what was better, Sega or Nintendo. We go back, I was team Nintendo. But I have to admit, I couldn't, I argued because I didn't want to be wrong or trying to save face. But at the time, the Genesis was definitely the superior system, and more people were on the bandwagon to play the Genesis, you know. But that's how it was back then. I remember even when Sonic came out, I asked my buddy, and I don't know, I didn't think he'd fall for it, but I had a Nintendo and he had the Sonic, and he had the Genesis. And this is before my uncle got his Genesis. And I was I tried, you know, you trade stuff back in there. I said, hey man, let me just trade for a weekend. I'll give you my Nintendo with I had about 20 or 30 games at the time. Well, I don't say that, man. I had about 20 games. And I said, I'll give you that and all my games. Let me just you can have that for the weekend, and let me keep your Sega Genesis, because he had just got Sonic. And he was a mild-mannered dude. You know, he didn't say too much. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm gonna get over on this guy. And he cussed me out. Straight up, he had some choice words. I'll never forget. We were coming back from the 7-Eleven. We were walking down the street, and I tried to throw this deal on him. And yeah, he let me have it. He told me where I can go stick it. So yeah, but so I guess I didn't fool him. I wouldn't play Sonic till later on. But yeah, that's how good the game was. You just had to play that game. So, but anyway, this, and I will say, this is the first time, if you can notice some of the videos are a little different from different timelines. But this was the first attempt at me trying to not so much repurpose, but just some people ask for longer videos. So I'm trying to maybe not all of them, but just I would just try this experiment here one time to try to make one longer video so people could, because some people, I'm guilty of this myself, and this is me kind of rambling just for a second. I used to love watching people, I still do to this day, love watching people's videos, and while I'm doing something, I might have seen their videos 3 or 4 times because I really enjoy them. Shout outs to Patman QC, God rest his soul. I used to love, and I still do love watching his videos, and they were so great, and they're still great to this day. Shout outs to him, definitely a huge inspiration. But what I would like to do is like I'll watch people's videos, and I'll put one on and I'll be cleaning or watch. Not to say the video's not interesting, it definitely is, but I'm so familiar with the video because I probably watched it a couple of times that it's great, you know, background or whatever. So people have asked me in the comments, can I make something like that? So I'm gonna try it with this one here. So if you notice, some of the videos are definitely their evolution videos, but they're ones that are older. But I already covered the Sega Arc, so I just try to kind of put them together and just see how this one goes. But I don't want to be the guy to keep re-release the same stuff, but at the same time somebody asked me for it, so I figured I'd try it just to see how it works, because I don't really want to get hit with that reused content strike either. So but we'll try it this one time just to see how it goes. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video with the rise of Sega, and we'll cover our next arc. I'll go into that into our next video, but we do have another arc coming up real soon. So with that, as always, guys, take care of yourself, protect your inner peace. God bless you. Catch you next video. Thanks for watching.